It is Monday. It is way past 7 o'clock. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. We're picking up where we left off with our project from last week. And we've got a file distributed to the masses. And the file is this part right here. The concept for today is we're going to try to get to a place where we can make something that looks much closer to this monstrosity that I kind of half-assed and did a couple weeks ago. So we've got I'm going to close that. Actually, maybe I'm going to leave that open for reference. But I'm going to close my power plug here. And I'm just going to start a new document. So over on the left-hand side, you can see I've got a project that I started called Tom's BattleBot. And having a project, when you're going to have multiple files that you make and kind of combine together, I think it's useful to have a project that they are kind of housed in. So just as are you guys familiar with the organization that Fusion 360 has? Like, kind of. So if we, at the very top level, we have projects here over in the left-hand side, and you can see or hide that window just by clicking on the Show Data Panel icon in the top left-hand corner. It's the little Rubik's Cube looking thing there. And the very top level here is projects. So all of these are projects here that we've done here in class. And if you want to start a new project, you can just click on that New Project button, and it will make a new project for you. And then that project, which I called Tom's BattleBot, is right down here. And into that project, for those of you who did not draw one, you are going to upload that file. So if you click on the little upload button here, and then you're going to select files, and you're going to navigate on your confuser to the place where you have that file. The file is in your computer. You just need to take a screwdriver, open it up, maybe like jimmy it, break the glue, and then like pull the file out, and then put your computer back together. And then you need to put that in the mail and upload it to the internet, which I believe it happens through the U.S. Postal Service now. I think that's a way that their current director has found to make them some money by uploading things to the internet. This internet thing is really going to catch on, so I think it's going to save the post office. So once you find that file called Power Plug, you're going to say open. I'm going to say cancel because I've already got it here. And then you're going to upload it. And assuming you've got the appropriate location chosen here, when you upload it, it will appear in your data panel. You're uploading it because all the things here in your data panel are in the cloud somewhere. They live in the cumulonimbus stratosphere area, and satellites send it to you. That's how the internet works. All right, so once you've got that file downloaded, we've all got the file. Cool. All right, good. So I'm going to start a brand new document. And in that brand new document, I'm going to save it right away. So from the file menu up here, I'm just going to go ahead and choose Save. And I'm going to save it as the locking power thing, because I don't know what to call it. So we can always change that name later. However, you do have to save before we go any further, because the first thing we actually want to do here is we want to insert a part that we already have. and it won't let you insert a part into your current design unless your current design is saved. So just a thing that Fusion does here. So our power plug that we just uploaded, now that we've got our current design saved, I can right click on the power plug in my data panel, and I can just say insert into current design. And it will do that. It will do your bidding. It doesn't really matter where this is right now, but right now what this is giving me the option of doing is positioning this part. So there are ways that I can rotate it in all three axes. I can move it in any one axis with these arrows, and the squares here will let me move it in two axes at once. So kind of like this is Z and X, for example. But I don't need to move it anywhere. Where it is just fine, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Alright, now I am going to do that one more time. So I'm going to import that power plug again. Am I going to import it again? Let's actually draw first. Let's draw first. So this part of the power plug down here is going to insert into the mirror image of itself. So I'm going to start by creating a new component. So I'm going to come up to the Create menu, and I'm going to choose the New Component option here. The name of this component is going to be the top. Probably make more sense to make the bottom first. Let's make the bottom. We'll make the bottom first. So the name of this new component is going to be called bottom. And I'm just going to go ahead and say OK. I'd like to have this power plug live inside of this component here. So we've got a power plug component, and that component is a reference to an external document over here, right? And we've got a component that's pretty much empty that is going to house a couple of these power plugs and some other bodies and drawings. And I'm pretty sure I can just click and drag that power plug component inside of my bottom component here. So we talked about organization and file structure here in Fusion over in our data panel. That organization kind of continues into the browser side in each of our files, right? So we've got a main document component in our browser here that houses literally everything that's part of this file. And then inside of that file, there can be other components and components inside of those components. It's kind of like a file structure, right? Each component will be comprised of sketches and bodies that are unique to that component, and that's kind of the structure here in the browser. All right, so let's go ahead and make a sketch. So from the Create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose to create a sketch. And I'm going to make that sketch on the top, on the surface of this component here. So I've got a flat part of this part, flat bit of this part. And I can make a sketch on any flat surface. And because this flat surface just happens to be where I want to create my sketch, I'm going to click on that little flat bit and spin me around. So I'm making a sketch here and looking straight down at that part. I would like to, as a reference, know a couple of things about the geometry of the part that I've got here. So I'd like to take some of this existing geometry like for example these two corners or maybe even this whole line, and I'd like to add them to the sketch that I'm currently working on. So to do that, from our create menu, I'm just going to go ahead and choose project include, and then I'm going to choose project. I waited for you guys a little bit. Sorry, I had to get started.
I appreciate that.
I've got a file for you on this thumb drive.
Okay.
You can come and grab it at your convenience. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this project option here. And I'm going to get rid of the thing that I accidentally clicked on. And I just want to project 2 bits here. I want to project the 2 corners that are going to be on kind of the outside of this part. And when you click on each one of those corners, they'll turn it purple, and we'll also see in our project window that we've got 2 selected items. Cool? Maybe I'm gonna say okay, and I'm gonna hide my power plug, and you can see I've got my projected dots there. Let me just kind of see how you guys do it with your projected dots. Cool.
So are you clicking on the actual surface of that corner?
Yeah, so I clicked on, when I created the sketch, tell you what, it looks like you're looking at a weird angle.
Okay, zoom way in.
Click on the word top. Yeah, somehow your part got spun at a weird angle. But
I should still be able to find that.
yeah, you should still be able to find that corner. I think it was maybe that back corner back there. That's kind of a sharp corner. There you go.
Is that where I want to put it?
Yeah, that's the item that you want to project.
Okay, yeah. It's right here.
Way up in there. There you go. That upper was just the dot. Perfect. Yeah,
And
that's the same thing on the other side there. Yeah. All right, cool. So once we've got a couple of projected dots, now I can figure out how big I want to make that rectangle. It's 11 3/4 by however big that is. All right, so now I'm going to turn my power plug visibility back on here, and from our create menu, I'm going to come up to this rectangle option and choose this 2-point rectangle. I am going to place the first corner of that rectangle on one of those 2 projected points. And then if I move my mouse up, and it will snap to this other point here, but I'm going to do a bad job and like really mess it up. I'd like this rectangle to be exactly the width of those dots, but I'll show you how to do that, how to fix it in post, because as a former photographer I like to fix things in post. The height in the orientation that I'm looking at this is going to be 11 3/4 inches. Is that right? No, that is wrong. It is actually going to be 11 1/4 inches. 11.25. Or you can also type in 11 1/4. There's also a fine way to type in dimensions. And like I said, I'm going to make this the wrong size here just because I want to show you how to add a constraint after the fact here. So I'd like to make this the same width as those 2 dots down there, but it's kind of difficult to do that. So we're going to add that constraint after the fact here. So I'm just going to click and place this way off to the side here and do a really bad job of lining that up. And oftentimes when I want to add a constraint after the fact like this, I do that on purpose. I make it, way off just because it's easier when things are further away to click on two different things. So I'm going to add a constraint that will allow me to bring this line and constrain it to be right on top of that dot there. There are probably two constraints that we could use. So I bet the horizontal vertical constraint would work, but I'm going to use the coincident constraint. So horizontal vertical just says that these two objects, whatever they are, will always be directly horizontal or directly vertical from each other. And this line, I guess that fits that description. This line could be directly vertical from this point. But I'm going to choose the coincident constraint here. So if I choose this coincident constraint and I pick the dot, the little point there that I did a bad job of lining my line up to, and then I click on my line second, it'll go ahead and snap that right into place. Alright, I'm going to do two more rectangles here. So from my create menu, I'm going to go ahead and grab the 2-point rectangle tool again, and I'm going to place the other 2-point rectangle on the outside of this.
Hang on, Carl.
Yeah.
Which constraint again?
I chose to use the coincident constraint.
Okay.
And here, if I just Command Z here, so if I come up to constraints and then choose coincident.
And you clicked on the dot first or the line first?
I clicked on the dot first.
Okay.
And then I clicked on the line second.
Okay, and it tells me each hidden part of the moon.
Ah. Let's see why.
Failed to solve.
Ah, you have a dimension there. So
Okay.
if you click on that dimension, you may have to hit escape or something like that. And then you click on that dimension. Instead of double clicking, just click a single click.
Okay.
So you may have to hit escape again. And then hit, so don't double click, just single click. And then hit delete. There we go. Now, it should let you constrain that.
Coincident. Dot. Line. Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So I want to make two more rectangles here. So from the create menu, I'll go ahead and choose my rectangle tool and then my 2-point rectangle tool here. I will click again on one of those corners, and then I'll move my mouse out here. This time I'm going to try to get that to snap into place here. And you can see what I'm kind of doing is I mouse over a point, and then I kind of move my mouse down, straight down from there. It gives me a little dotted line. Thank you. And then that is, that's how I know I'm kind of like snapped, for lack of a better word, into place here. And we're going to make the thickness of that rectangle 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to hit enter. Now I am going to go ahead and do that same coincident constraint trick here, because I noticed that I've got a blue line here. I tried a blue line. Black lines indicate that your sketch that you're making is what's known as fully constrained. So you're kind of like locked into position and dimension. So if you want to make sure if you see blue lines here, then that's a clue that your sketch is not fully constrained. And my guess is I could just click and drag this, and I can just, because it doesn't have a dimension. But I can add that coincident constraint here. So from the constraints menu, I'll come up to coincident again. I'll choose the dot first and then the line second, and it'll snap that right into place again. I'm going to do another one of those rectangles on the opposite side of my little piece here. So from the create menu, I'll go ahead and choose rectangle, and then 2-point rectangle. I'll specify that corner there of our piece. Hitting the tab key bounces you back and forth between those two measurements if you didn't know that. So just by hitting tab, I can bounce back and forth between the two measurements. I try to get in the habit of, like, once I see numbers here in Fusion, to let go of my mouse and embrace the power of the keyboard. And I'm just going to make that also 1/4 of an inch in thickness, and then the width doesn't really matter here because we're going to add that coincident constraint later to get it fully constrained here. So again, I've got this blue line here that is indicating that it's not fully constrained. So I'm going to come up to my constraints menu and choose that coincident constraint, and then I'll pick the corner of my rectangle and then the line, and those are now snapped into place. And now if I try to move that, it won't let me move that line because it's kind of fully locked into place there.
Why do you need a constraint?
Well, so that's a fine question. You don't really need them constrained. However, I find that if you're going to go back and change a number, I'm sure I'm going to go back and change a number. Having things that are kind of fully locked into place makes changing numbers, whatever's going to happen there, more predictable.
Oh, so it'll move with it, all the other parts.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you know, like, it's easy for me to change this measurement to, 10 inches, and I know that the things that, if everything is fully constrained, it's going to move in a predictable way. Sometimes if you have blue lines along with your black lines, those blue lines are going to move in funny ways because they might be locked in position over here but not in length, or locked in length but not in position. So they don't necessarily behave predictably. Good question, thank you. All right, so now the next thing that I want to do here is I would like to have a circle that is right in the middle of this rectangle. That circle, I wonder if I can get that right in line with constraints. Probably not, actually. I'd have to put a point on there. So let's do that. So in addition to line, we don't do this a whole lot here. I'm going to go ahead and grab my line tool here. And if I hover over what appears to be the middle of this rectangle, as I move my mouse near the middle of the rectangle, I get a little blue triangle that pops up. That little blue triangle is indicating to me that that is the midpoint of the line. That is actually a form of constraint. In fact, I think there is a midpoint constraint that you can add. Yeah, there's a midpoint constraint that you can add. So if you ever do a bad job of making a line and you want to make sure it ends up in the middle of something, you can add that constraint after the fact. But we can do it from the get-go just by making sure that that blue triangle pops up before we click on to start our line. And then if I move my mouse down, now I'll click on the opposite side of that rectangle, and I also make sure I've got my little blue triangle. And then there's also a blue square here. That blue square is indicating that it's a 90-degree angle. It's a perpendicular constraint. that it is adding there. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab my circle tool. So from the create menu, I'll come up to circle and then choose center diameter circle. And if I do the same thing here, if I hover over the midpoint of that line that I just made, then I get that midpoint constraint that kind of is suggested to me. And I can just click and place that center point there, and I'm gonna make this a 1 inch. Mike, metal conduit, the interior diameter is the ID of is like 1 inch, a common ID for a metal pipe? Or is it more common to see an outer dimension of something?
No, it's the ID.
Okay.
What size of pipe are you looking to fit through there?
Well, probably somewhere between 3/4 and 1 inch.
3/4 inch as an OD. 3/4 inch thin wall has an OD of about 1,000. I want to say 1,000. 1 inch, 60 thousandths
So
roughly.
Let's do 0.75 inches here then for this circle. You could also do 3/4 if you'd like. And then I'm going to hit enter. Alright, and then I am going to, this is going to eventually be a pipe that we make here. So I'm going to go ahead and create that outer wall right away. So from the modify tool, instead of drawing another circle, I am going to choose to offset from that existing circle that we made. So I'll go ahead and choose offset. I'll click on that circle that we made, and Mike, you said it was 10 thousandths?
Nah, closer to 49 thousandths.
0.049.
Yeah.
So 0.049 is going to be our offset amount there.
Give me a second, I'll give you the exact number.
For those of you who don't know, Mike wasn't a drain-out society his whole life. He used to be an electrician, and I say drain-out society because that's the term he uses for himself. So I say it with affection.
Parasite on society.
Parasite. Sorry.
Okay, 3/4 conduit. It has an official outside diameter of 0.922 and an ID of 0.824.
Oh, so the interior diameter is 0.824.
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be close enough.
So I think your wall thickness is still about 49 thousandths.
Okay.
Roughly.
And these measurements, I often find it helpful to move these around where they're a little bit easier to read. So you can move those measurements just by clicking and dragging on them and then reposition them.
After you finish the sketch, you gotta accidentally.
If you accidentally click finish sketch and all of your numbers disappear, you should panic and just start over.
That's what I usually
No,
do.
yeah. So inside of our bottom component here, we've got a sketches folder. And inside of that sketches folder will probably be the sketch that you're looking for. So you can either right click there and say edit sketch, or down in the timeline, down in the very bottom here, we've got a timeline of kind of events that happened here. We can right click on that and say edit sketch, and then we kind of go back into editing that sketch there. Alright, so the last thing that I want to do here is just kind of a personal preference. So the only reason that we drew this line was to reference the middle of this rectangle here, and I'm gonna eventually extrude out these bits here. Just a personal preference. This solid line is gonna make it so I have to click on more things, and I'm lazy. And I don't like to do that. So if I click on that line, and then in my sketch palette, the line type option here in my sketch palette, the very first button there is construction. That'll change that to a dashed line, and now you see when I highlight it, it's not bisected by that line. I do this a lot, and there's a keyboard shortcut for construction, for toggling construction on and off. It is the X key. So, all right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. I will point out though that these midpoint constraints are nice because I can change this to like a 6-inch box if I want to, and that just kind of stays locked right in the middle there. So if Tom's making this and he's like, oh no, I actually need that to be a 10-inch box, I won't have to start over. I'll just change one measurement, call it a day. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and say finish sketch. Now, let me kind of go around the room here. I'm going to get in a better habit of this, kind of walking around in between time, in the meantime, in between time. All right. And see how we're doing. We got rectangles.
I just gotta watch.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, they keep hitting the wrong thing and losing
What's that
everything.
preference button? Because I want to reverse my scroll button.
Oh, so preferences are going to be, I believe, if you, the very top right-hand corner where you can click on the picture of your person,
Okay.
and then,
Okay.
yeah, preferences is the second option down there. It's kind of cut off on by that metal pole that's floating in the ceiling there. But yeah, so preferences are there. I don't know that the scroll wheel preference is going to be in there.
Reverse zoom direction.
All right, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So now the next thing that we're going to do here is I'm going to make some extrusions. So from my create menu, I'm going to go ahead and say extrude. And the first item that I'm going to extrude, I think, is going to be this plate on the very bottom here. So this center large rectangle bit here. Because I chose to make my sketch on an existing surface, I have an extra little bit to click on here. So this was the flat part that I created my sketch on. And when you create your sketch on an existing surface, it kind of carries over some geometry from the edges of that surface. It's kind of like invisible lines that are there, so you just gotta kind of watch for that when you create a sketch on an existing surface. And I'm not going to highlight those bits of that circle. I changed my mind. I'm going to highlight the bits of the circle there. And I'm going to extrude this a distance of 1/4 of an inch. Now, I will say that negatives and positives in Fusion can be confusing sometimes. So you want to make sure you're extruding away from that existing part. If for some reason your extrusion is going towards your existing part and you're cutting it off, you want to change your negative to a positive or change your positive to a negative, whatever the case may be there. When we extrude things, you know that we have an option, an operation option here. And we are going to make this a new body. As opposed to like joining it to an existing body or using it to cut away from an existing body, we're going to go ahead and make this a brand new body. And then I'm going to say OK. Now I'm going to do extrude again. realized I made more sketching than I need to, but that's all right. From my extrude menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the extrude option. From my create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the extrude option one more time here. I'm going to choose as the object or as the profile that I'm going to extrude is this little, one of these little tiny rectangles on the outside here. And I'd like it to go as far up as this plate is here, but I'd also like it to go as far as actually it's going to go further than that. So I want to extrude this in two directions at the same time. And thankfully, there is an option here in my direction drop-down menu that I can switch it to two sides. And I can go in one direction, I can go that 1/4 of an inch. In fact, it's going to be the other direction that I go 1/4 of an inch. So over here, I'm going to go 1/4 of an inch. And then in the other direction, I actually don't know how far I'm going to go right now. So I'm going to go 6 inches. Just knowing that I can change this and probably will be changing this later. My operation here has defaulted to join, and that's because it is directly touching another body, like inside of this component. So I'm going to change that to a new body. So I'm making a brand new body there. And I'm going to say OK. Now, I mentioned this extrusion here. In fact, I'm doing a really bad job of keeping organized. This often gets away from me. So I've got a sketch here that I can name here. So in our sketches folder, we'll just kind of finish up class with doing a little bit of organization here. So I'm going to click on my sketch in my sketches folder. If I click one time and pause and click a second time, I'm going to change this to, I don't know, bottom. Anything is better than sketch 1. I've got a couple of bodies that I can name. So this is the bottom plate. And then this over here is the side plate. I mentioned that I actually don't know how long I want that extrusion to be. And in the interest of being able to find this extrusion later, I can name that extrusion. So down here at the bottom, we've got a kind of our timeline of events and things we've done so far here. If I right-click on that feature, I could edit it and change the extrusion. However, I can also rename it. So this is a measurement or an extrusion that I'm definitely going to want to come back to. And if I want to be able to find it, all these extrudes all look the same to me. I'm not just being a terrible person to extrude functions. They literally all look the same. So I'm going to change it to side plate. All right, and then I'm going to hit enter. And I'm going to hit enter. And then Fusion is going to pause and encourage me to breathe and find joy in the world. Well, it does not respond. There we go. All right, good. Okay, good. So, I want to do one more thing, two more things before we finish up here. So, I'd like to, I've got a component and a body over here that I'd like to have mirrored directly over onto the other side here. I am going to do that by creating a construction plane right in the middle of this plate here. Thankfully, we already have a line right in the middle of that plate that is constrained to be in the middle of that plate no matter what, no matter how big that plate is. So from my construction menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose this plane at an angle option here. I'm going to click on that line there that is the middle of my plate, and for me I'm going to change that to a 90-degree angle. Only it just went ahead and 90. So that way it cuts it in half. Does that make sense? Cool. I'm going to say OK. I've got a construction folder that's appeared now over in my bottom component. And in it, it's got a plane. I'm just going to call this my mid. I'm just going to call it mid. And now I can use that mid plane to mirror a couple of items. So from my create menu, I'll go ahead and choose the mirror option. I'll start with the default here is bodies, so I'll just go ahead and start mirroring the body. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the side plate as the body that I'm going to mirror. I can either choose that in my drawing view, or I can pick on the side plate body in my bodies folder over here in my browser. And then the same thing with the mirror plane. So I can pick the mirror plane in my drawing view here just by hovering over it and clicking it, or I can click on the mid plane in my browser over here on the left hand side of the screen. And then I'm going to say OK. And there's that new body over there. I'm going to turn off that sketch just because things are getting confusing. There we go. I'm going to do that one more time. So from the create menu, I'm going to go ahead and choose the mirror option. This time, instead of mirroring a body, I'm going to choose to mirror a component. So we've got that power plug component that we brought in at the beginning of class. So now I can select as the object that I'm going to mirror the component in my browser, or again I can click on it in my drawing view here, select the midplane that we're going to mirror that across, and then I will say OK. All right, cool.
Could you have done both of them in one mirror operation, or do they have to be compatible types?
Yes. So we could have done both of those in the same mirror operation, but I often you'll get a slightly different result. So I have to unselect the mirroring, and then will it let me choose this body here? Oh, actually, it will not.
Because they're different types. One's a body and one's a component. Is that it?
Well, kind of. So this second, is it right here? Oh, I didn't do it right. So if I choose this mirror option here, I think it will let me choose. Oh, no, it won't. It won't let me choose this object, even though, like, this is a body. In some way, shape, or form, this is a body. It's a body that's not in our currently active component. It's a body that's in a linked component. So it's a body eventually. It's right here. I can turn it on and off. But for whatever reason, I wonder if I make this, I can't even make this my active component because it's a component from another document. So if this wasn't a component from another document, my guess is, in fact, here, let me illustrate this just so you know. I'm going to do something that I would highly encourage you not to do. I'm going to break that link. Has some essential dependent instances. Oh, it won't even let me break the link. Good job, Fusion.
Alright, so the short answer is no.
Yeah, so well, if this was just a normal component that wasn't a component that was from another document, what would happen if I were to choose mirror and then choose bodies is it would make a mirror of the body inside of this component in the component. So now instead of one body inside of this power plug component, I'd have two bodies inside of that power plug component. You know, maybe that's just less clean, or maybe that's what you want. I guess it depends on the purpose. But I'm going to go ahead and make a mirror of components, and I'm going to select that right there, and then I'm going to tell my computer to stop turning orange because it's 8 o'clock at night, and there we go. That is the beginning of our power plug thing that we're making here. I'm going to do one last thing, and that is we drew this. I said, hey, it makes more sense to draw the bottom first, but right now our thing is upside down. Just as a point of order here, my navigation cube tells me that this is the top, and you can actually tell your navigation cube what side you want to be the top. So if I move over to where I can see the word bottom here now, and I click on it so I'm looking straight down at the bottom, and now it's important that we're looking straight down. We don't want to be looking slightly askewed like this, because you can mess up your orientation like that. So we're looking straight down at the bottom. I know that because I clicked on the little square that represented the bottom there, so I'm looking straight down. And if I right click, I can say set current view as top. Now now it's like, I don't know, right side up-ish. It didn't move my X, Y, or my Z around, but sometimes that can be useful. It's really easy to rotate an object around the top and bottom poles, like the north and the south poles. It's less easy to rotate things sometimes using the navigation cube if your top and bottom are askewed. So, food for thought. All
It
things
doesn't
possible.
affect your home though. If you click the home button, it
Oh,
bounces you around.
that's interesting. You know what? I think, Mike, you can also change your home.
But you
So
have to do that
if I right click on this, I can say set current view as home. And you can fit view, or you can do it at current distance, and then if you move around, you can set that as your own. You know, that's useful if you're like, you know, maybe I want this to be my home position. Like I'm doing a lot of stuff around here. I need to come back to this part of my model frequently. I can set that current view as home at a fixed distance, and then I can move out and zoom into another place and do a thing, and then it's like, oh yeah, now I need to go and make sure I didn't mess something up over there. Yeah. All right, cool. So that brings us to the end of today. We'll pick this up next week and make the top and potentially the locking mechanism. We'll see how far we get next week. Cool?
Awesome.
All right, beautiful. Beautiful. I'm going to save. Saving is always good.